Hi, I'm Nina Baratova, professional wedding photographer and the owner of Baratova Photography. I started the Modern Florida Wedding podcast to help couples plan their wedding their way. I sit down with local vendors to discuss the ins and outs of making sure your wedding is picture perfect. I also interview people who've already had their dream weddings to find out their secrets to actually enjoying their big day. Join me in creating an inclusive community where all are welcome. This is the Modern Florida Wedding Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Modern Florida Wedding Podcast. I'm joined today by Suki from Offbeat Wed. It is a blog that's a great resource for couples and some not couples as well. So you'll kind of see what we're talking about there. But so Suki, why don't you go ahead and tell us your name, pronouns, and where you're from?
Yeah, so my name is Suki. My pronouns are she, her, and I am in Tampa, Florida. I grew up here in Tampa, actually.
Nice. I grew up in Bradenton, which is just south of Tampa, and I'd always think about like, oh my God, one day I'm going to live in Tampa. And now that I'm here, I'm like, I need to get out.
Oh man. I left for like 10 years. Like I went to college in Orlando and then I like moved around like all over the world for a little bit. And then I somehow after the pandemic made my way back here, and it is insane to see how much Tampa has changed. And then
For
also
sure.
I'm going to talk about insurance for a little bit, car insurance. I was like, why did my car insurance go up? Like I was paying a good price. It went up because all the rates in Florida went up because so many people are
Literally,
moving.
okay. I literally was just telling like in my family group chat, I was like, my car insurance rate went up by almost $200.
Yes.
And I was, well, not like monthly. I pay every 6 months, so that's why that's there. But Suki and I have worked together in the past. I actually shot her 30th birthday party, which is super fun. Yeah, well, I'll maybe throw in some spicy pics for that later. But I just kind of wanted to ask you how you got your start in the wedding industry. So this is a wedding podcast and you have a wedding blog. So let us know like what made you, start pursuing this as an endeavor.
Yeah. So I have always, like, since the dawn of Pinterest, I think, when I was in college in like 2010 to 2014, like I remember Pinterest came out and I was like, oh my gosh, weddings are so cool. But aside from that, I've always loved celebration. I've always loved the ability to celebrate. And there's a quote that someone said is you can tell a lot about a community by what they celebrate. And I think weddings are a really good example of that because every culture has a history with marriage and weddings, and they celebrate it differently. And I always thought that was so cool that weddings don't look the same like anywhere you go. And then in addition to that, when I was in college, I was reading a lot of Offbeat Bride at the time. Like that was just like the blog that kept showing up that I actually resonated with, because you would get these other like mainstream wedding publications. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. But I don't really see a lot of myself reflected in there. Like it was a lot of like, cis white people. And I was like, okay, that's great, but that's not me. And Offbeat Bride, now Wed, was the first wedding blog that I was like, oh, like I can actually relate to this. So they were always like my North Star in terms of wedding planning. And at the time, obviously I wasn't going to get married, but I was like, when I do start planning a wedding, I'm going to be looking at Offbeat Wed. And then I got engaged and started planning a wedding. And I think that the reality sunk into me like, wow, this is definitely an industry that is catered towards like people of a certain tax bracket and also people that look a certain way. And I still don't see myself like represented anywhere. So I started writing like an Instagram. I started this Instagram called Two Buck Chuck Bride. And the intent was to sort of make fun of the wedding industry as a whole. But then, of course, wedding planning, is a very personal thing. So it started to get very personal for me. And I started sort of using my Instagram to document my experience as a Asian American woman, planning a wedding, and all of the nuances that come with that. And at the same time, I was sort of wondering, like, how do I fit into the wedding industry? Because I was working in basically like video content production. I was writing videos for YouTube, and I just didn't quite understand, like, where do I fit in? Like, I love weddings, but I don't know. Like, I'm not a photographer, I'm not a videographer, I'm not a florist, I'm not a wedding planner. And then one day I made a reel that went negative viral, which, if you don't know what negative viral means, a lot of people didn't like it. And it was interesting because what the algorithm does is it pushes your content out to people that disagree with your content, because they know that those people are going to engage with your content.
Yeah,
So
they're going to comment something like negative, and then you're going to defend yourself, and then it's going to happen again. So,
and it keeps people on the app. Like, that's like the whole purpose of it. So the algorithm pushed my content out to people that would never, honestly, that would never even, one, give a fuck about weddings. Like, these people that were commenting, I'm like, you're not getting married for many years. Like, I don't know why this pertains
if ever.
to you. Right.
If ever.
And then two, like, people with very opposite like values of me. So that was like my first, like, opening the curtain and seeing like how Oz works a little bit, or the Wizard of Oz or whatever. Oh my gosh, look at that cat.
This is Ollie. Hi, Ollie. Say hi. He's so like, pretty. Okay, mom, put me down.
It pushed my content out to people that, you know, would inherently disagree with what I was saying. And then Ariel of Offbeat Wed, which, like, all throughout this time I was like, oh my gosh, Offbeat Wed, like, I love them, I'm using them as my North Star. Ariel reached out to me and offered me a part-time job writing for Offbeat Wed and making content and running their social media. So that was my into the wedding industry as a writer, but also a content creator in a way.
That's really cool. I mean, it's kind of sucks how it happened, but it's cool that you were noticed that way. And, you know, I've had a few things go viral, but it's never the ones you expect. It's always like the dumbest videos, like not the videos that you work like an hour on to make, get like 3 likes, and you're like, thanks, mom. Thanks, Aunt Susan. Yeah, so $2 Chuck was the Instagram page that you had started, right? Do you feel like you've stayed true to that as now that you've progressed to Offbeat Wed?
You know, I have not been posting a lot on $2 Chuck Bride because I've been so consumed with Offbeat Wed, but I think a lot of my values remain the same. I still, like, the lights go on when, you know, any conversation happens about like budget and money and multiculturalism and identity. And I think it says it in my $2 Chuck Bride bio as well. It's like, I'm trying to figure out how, like, culture and money tie into weddings, because I think both of those things are actually really, you know, important and informative in how you think about weddings, how you plan a wedding. So there is definitely still a little bit of $2 Chuck Bride, like, you know, interlaced Offbeat Wed.
That's good. Yeah, I definitely think culture and money are kind of the pillars of the wedding industry, right? So, for example, like, I've shot an Indian wedding, and let me tell you, culture and money were there. It was beautiful. But I was also like, wow, this must have cost a pretty penny. So
yeah, and it says a lot about how that you know, that family values like this experience.
Exactly, because it's yeah, and it's not just, well, some cultures it's not just for the bride, right? Or not just for the couple, I mean, or the marriers, it's for the whole family, and it's like a reason for everybody to get together. So, you know, sometimes you do have to put other people's like opinions, you have to weigh other people's opinions. My whole thing is something I like saying on this podcast is like, you should do your wedding your way, but, you know, your way can also mean you know, doing things for your family, and that might be something that, you know, it has more value to you than maybe like your partner being able to rock like blue hair. You know, maybe your parents are like, I don't know about that, so you kind of have to pick and choose. But
totally, yeah, it comes down to your, like, the thing that I was holding on to when we were planning our wedding was priorities. Like, what are your priorities? And if your
For
priorities
sure.
in
Yeah.
wedding are, I want to do this tradition that my mom has done, like that's very important to me, and her mom before her and all that stuff. That's amazing. And if you don't want to do that, that's also amazing. Instead of like just being like, this is what
Right.
individualism looks like. Like, you can still be offbeat, right? And hold on to your identity while also cherishing like maybe someone else's values, if that's also important to you. If it's not important to you,
Exactly.
then that's something else completely, and that's totally fine. So I
Right.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that philosophy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, most of us prefer to only have one wedding. I don't know, some people might want more. Or one like timeline of weddings. Some people have to do like one in one country, one in another country, but it's a special moment in your life and you only get so many. Most people get one. So it's just I really think the idea of doing it for yourself, even if you have other people's opinions or best interests at heart, I think that's so important because you're going to cherish those memories for the rest of your life. So,
Yeah, totally.
well, okay. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about like a day in your life? Like wake up, what's next?
I wake up, and this sounds so unhealthy, but I will check Offbeat Wed socials and see what happened overnight. Like, I know that sounds
Mhm.
super unhealthy, but I'm actually excited to do it because our followers, readers, our vendors, like, there is always something juicy and fun and interesting that's going on.
Yeah,
And
like
it's
threads.
like threads. Oh my gosh, threads. Yes, I go now. I like, my routine used to be like check Instagram, check Facebook, check my email, and now it's like threads before everything. Threads before
Right.
coffee. And it's been so cool to see Offbeat Wed vendors on threads, like just
Mhm.
being themselves, which they were already being themselves on Instagram. So it's like cool to see them do this, like throw
Right.
themselves into this wholeheartedly. And then also I'm meeting a lot of other wedding vendors on threads too, and it's actually
Me
becoming this.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, and your wedding, but yeah, talk about that. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, Instagram should
I
have been the place, but
Right. It to me like somebody I saw I almost said a tweet. I saw a thread somewhere that was like, this is like having a summer camp with all of your best friends who work in your industry or something. And I was like, that's so funny because it's true. Like when you go to a summer camp, you might not know everybody, but everyone's kind of like your same age and they have similar interests. So on threads, I've met all these photographers that like I would probably not really I mean, I might see them on Instagram, but I wouldn't necessarily like get to know them. I feel like Threads is a great place to like, actually like discuss things with people or like comment and get to know each other because like no like some people are being like talking about how they've switched to like a non-dairy creamer and which one's the best ones, but other people are like I'm realizing now that like I value community. So it's like there's like a big dichotomy of like really valuable information and it's also like funny stuff that makes you laugh. So it's like it's perfect. And I like it also because I've always been a very visual person, yes, but I feel like with threads, it's like it's almost like there's more value to some of it because to me, I'm kind of like slowing down because like sometimes I go on Instagram and it's just this, right? The whole time. And I'm like, I'm not absorbing anything. I mean, TikTok's
right.
even worse, but I have learned some really good stuff on TikTok. I just made a salmon rice bowl from salmon in the air fryer that I found on TikTok. And I was like, this is the most delicious thing I've ever seen. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And it can be overwhelming to be a vendor and have to be on like every single social media website, but at the end of the
Mhm.
day, that you're going to find one that works best for you. And I think, you don't have to give the other ones as much weight if you're connecting with people better on, let's say threads versus TikTok. So
Right,
sorry, I
definitely.
I
No,
want to go back to the rest of your day. So you,
no, it's no,
you
this is
check
amazing.
threads.
I love talking about this. I derail all the time. I think that is so smart. And I think, I've seen Ariel has seen a lot of this happen, because Ariel started Offbeat Wed, like, you know, when blogging was like such a hot thing, right? When people were like,
Blogspot.
right. And then Ariel is the person that has also seen, you know, platforms change dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There was the point where like Facebook video, Facebook watch, like all that stuff was like, you know, hot tamales. And
Right.
then all of a sudden it tanked, like, you know, people weren't watching as many videos on Facebook, and a lot of small businesses like lost revenue and attention because of that. So I think it's important as a small business owner, as a wedding vendor, to try everything, sample a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
everything, but not get tied to one form of social content. And like, for, you know, the whole metaphor for a summer camp, I absolutely love that, because like, I mean, I don't know if you went, I'm sure you went to summer camp. I went to a lot of theater camp, and it was just so easy with people, because it's like, oh, we're all here because we love theater. We don't even know each other, but we're instantly best friends. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
Threads feels like, because I feel like Instagram is like, you see their work and you're like, oh my God, I love their work, they're so talented. But then Threads is like, you see their brain, right? Like you see how
Right.
they
Yeah.
live on the world. And it's so much easier to be like, I knew I liked you, but I definitely like you more now because our values align. You know, you use this type of creamer, I also use this type of creamer. This is so much fun. So I'm excited
Yeah.
for you.
I definitely love like seeing people's personalities. I think that's what it is. Cause you know, everybody's super talented that I follow. Um, and I'm sure there's people I don't follow that are super talented, but getting to see their personalities and like being able to be like, okay, so they're not just like super talented, they're also really funny, you know, so it's pretty
Yeah,
cool. So
love that. You know,
yeah.
I actually was thinking about this. I want to do like a Florida like vendor wedding meetup, like maybe in the Tampa
Yeah.
area. We can all go to the beach or something fun and
Yeah, that
cute.
would be super fun. I know I just talked to Shannon. She does the Florida wedding map, which is a blog that has a bunch of wedding venues and additional stuff. But she was saying that there's like every year there's like a convention. So that's probably and people get like hotels and stuff. So I think that's like a multi-day thing. But we could probably do something like maybe just like the Bay Area or like Central Florida. That's only like 1 day, so we don't have to like spend money on hotels.
Yeah, we could
So
do like an Airbnb or something together with a
right.
pool, Airbnb with a pool, and we'll all hang out together.
Yes. Yes. And all us photographers will take your new headshots.
We don't want you working. We all want to have fun.
No, but that's
Right.
that's when we take each other's headshots too, which is good because then we have,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh my gosh, let's
because like
actually
I yes, let's do it. Uh anyway, so do
plan.
you once you get out of bed,
Uh-huh.
do you go pet your dog, your cat? Do you have any pets?
Oh yeah, the dogs are usually in bed with me already. Like there
Oh.
are, yeah, they sleep with us. They'll go sleep in their bed when we first go to bed, when we first tuck ourselves in. They're like, yeah, we're good. We're in our little beds. And then in the middle of the night, they'll come crawling in and sleep with us.
Oh.
The day starts off with, you know, like petting them and giving them kisses. And
Mhm.
then checking social, doing our routine, working out, getting coffee, and then sitting down in front of our computers to work and
Mhm.
um, seeing, you know, what is happening in the wedding world, like specifically the non-traditional wedding world, and mostly paying
Right.
attention to marriers and, you know, what their thoughts, concerns are around getting married right now. I think that's like a big thing that informs a lot of our content is we try to make sure that we're listening to the folks that are getting married and the vendors too that are experiencing weddings like every weekend, right?
Right.
Because trends change and language changes, and it's so important to us to keep a pulse on how that's happening and ways to be more inclusive as it's happening. We learn so much from our followers and our readers and our vendors, honestly. So like I
Right.
said, like people might think it's so toxic that I log on to social immediately, but I'm actually always interested in hearing what our vendors and our readers have to say, honestly. They're like the
Yeah.
smart
I don't think
people.
it's toxic if it makes you happy. Like I think that's a good thing.
So for those who don't know, Ariel is the publisher behind Offbeat Wed. Ariel wrote a book called Offbeat Bride, and the publisher chose that name, Offbeat Bride. And then to help promote the book, Ariel started a blog. And then the blog just took off after that. So whenever I mention Ariel, I'm talking about my boss, who is also the founder and publisher of Offbeat Wed.
I love that. And it's also more inclusive, not everybody's a bride, but
Right. Yeah.
That's super. I like the Offbeat Wed name tag. It makes me feel like there's people out there like me.
Yeah, it was time. And when Ariel announced the change, it was, not, I don't want to say controversial. It wasn't controversial, but people had their opinions. A lot of people were super excited about it. A lot of people were like, this is a big fail. Like, I don't like it. It sounds
and
weird.
it's only like the two extremes that usually voice their opinions. So there's like when you go to restaurant reviews, it's always like, I had the best food ever here, and somebody's like, I had the worst food ever here, and it's like, well, we'll see.
That's a really accurate description of that. But yeah, I mean, if it makes a huge part of our demographic feel included, then that's what's important to us. We're all, one of our values is inclusivity, right? And I think language, like I said earlier, like language changes too. So I think it's really cool that Ariel decided to change this after several years of being Offbeat Bride. And I think this is actually go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, that's a brave move to do, because it's not, I mean, it's not like easy, I think. And plus, like, you got to get all new business cards. I'm just kidding.
No, yeah. Well, it was kind of like that too, like, because a huge part of it is like the traffic that comes to the website, right? Like, we were Offbeat Bride for so long, and then the minute we changed everything to Offbeat Wed, our traffic tanked, and it was a little bit of a struggle for a bit, but that's not the important part, you know what I mean? And obviously traffic up again, and that's why on our site you'll see like Offbeat Wed, formerly Offbeat Bride. Like, there's a whole like back end, like engineering, technical IT thing that goes on behind the
I think it's called like SEO or something. I had somebody I have my sister-in-law is like a marketing person, and she's like, can I help you with your website? You don't have any SEO. I'm like, I would if I knew what it was.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things that you're like, oh, I hate this, but I know it's important. So it's that, and a lot of like weird googly IT stuff, but it was worth it ultimately. I think like that's more important to us than like, people agreeing with the name or able to find the website easily. And
I actually
think,
like this one better. It's like, I don't care what you like. This is that's not about you.
Right. Yeah.
No offense, everybody. Everything's always about you. Please follow us on social media.
Yes, it is catered to you. Your opinions, they do matter. They do matter. And we definitely take our readers and followers' opinions like into consideration. And that's one of the things that I had to learn like the hard way, because I did not really work I was a social media user, but I was never like a social media creator, if you know what I mean. And so when I had to become a creator, I had to learn, like, I got to listen to these people. I can't just disagree because it doesn't align with like my values or, what I think should happen. That was a huge thing that like working at Offbeat Wed and working with Ariel taught me, is like, just put your ego aside for a second and like take a moment to listen. And, a lot of the times it turns out like these things are valid. Like when people complain or people are expressing like, I disagree with this, blah, blah, blah. Like there is some validity to it. And so we always try to filter that and understand like where this person's coming from. So the internet is a wild place. And as you know,
it's the Alamo. It's the Alamo.
Right.
So speaking about your website, what are some resources you guys have available for people who are looking to plan their wedding?
Oh my gosh, so many. So actually recently launched a officiant guide, and this is for folks. This is actually written by a longtime officiant who is retired, and then this officiant has written a guide for us and made it incredibly inclusive. So for anyone who has like a friend or a loved one that they want to officiate their wedding, this is the guide that you can get for them as a gift, right? To literally help like soothe their nerves, teach them step by step what they need to do. It's even a great resource to learn how to write your own vows. So that's like one of the biggest resources that we have right now. We have wedding planning spreadsheets that are for people who are neurodivergent or like, generally just do not love the idea of like having to sit down and do like super organized, like strict wedding planning. So this is catered towards people who, think in a way that is not super linear. And that's what I especially love about this, is because when we think of wedding planning, we think of like lists and like doing things by the book. And this spreadsheet is not that at all. So there's that. And then in addition to that, we also just have a lot of offbeat weddings, like real offbeat weddings from offbeat readers and other folks who decided to have weddings that really, differentiated from traditional weddings. And then sometimes we have what people will call traditional weddings aesthetically, but the intent behind it is actually pretty non-traditional. So we have multiple archives of different themes, from like goth weddings to Christian weddings, to non-religious weddings. Like every single theme you can think of is on there, and they're all so cool and great. It was a great like inspiration for me as I was planning my wedding. So
That's awesome. Yeah, as somebody who like has trouble even making a to-do list, I feel like that spreadsheet would help a lot. Yeah, it's rough out there. Like I have had many friends plan weddings, and they're always like, most of them are type A, so they're like, "Oh, I love doing this stuff. It's hard, but it's a lot of fun and da da da." And I'm like, I can't relate. Like I barely, as an engineer, like the reason why my full-time job is in engineering is A, it's a good income, and B, I'm lazy. Like there's that, because like, we look for the easiest, simplest, fastest way to do something, and then we do it that way. Like I would rather spend like 30 minutes writing a code to self-populate a table than doing it by hand for 10 minutes. But then next time I have to do it, I'll have that code. You know what I mean?
right.
So it's
Oh
almost
my
like
God.
doing things like not linearly, like you were saying. So
Yeah, I love
definitely
that.
have.
Yeah, the spreadsheets, the Offbeat Wed wedding planning spreadsheets are definitely for that person. I am type A, and I love the checklist, right? I love doing things by the book. I'm very formulaic. Even though I come off as like, wow, but like behind these hazel eyes, I'm very like, this plus this equals this. And then the spreadsheets are just wonderful because they cater to, I don't know what you call it, type B, type C, like whatever, but they're definitely for the person that does not think neurotypically. So
Right. Yeah, I would have, I don't know. That's part of me is like, if I get married, I might just elope, because
I hear that from a lot of wedding vendors that
yeah, it's like we've seen so many weddings. It's like there's nothing that I haven't seen that like I desperately need to do. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. And then another part of me was like, how cute would it be to just like go to the courthouse, but and then just have like spend all that money on your honeymoon. So I don't know.
yeah,
I feel like
absolutely.
a lot of millennials and Gen Z have that issue as well. It's like, well, if I'm going to be spending all this money, maybe I'll have just throw a big party and not necessarily call it a wedding. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, what is a wedding but like a big party
Right,
ultimately? Like,
right.
if you take the pressure off of it, of like, oh, it's like one day in your life, like whatever, like it's a big party that they're throwing for yourselves to celebrate yourself. And whether, that looks like eloping and then going out for like pizza or going to your favorite dive bar, or like having like a huge wedding at this huge ballroom, like I just love the idea of celebration. So however you want to celebrate your love, like,
Yeah.
I'm
Life is,
for it. Like,
I think it's like Kate Spade, who had like that whole line that was "Life is a party." I think that maybe, or maybe I'm just making that up in my head. I don't know, but I think she had, maybe, who knows?
Kate
I'll
Spade has
look it
a
up.
lot of party quotes, like really cute party quotes. So I do not
Okay.
doubt.
Okay, good. If I find it, I'll put it in this video. I'll put it right here. Spoiler alert, I did not find it. You've planned your wedding and you've been in the wedding industry a little bit. What do you think is the most valuable piece of advice that you received or found when it comes to wedding planning?
Oh man. When you start wedding planning, I have said this like till the cows come home. Like, think about your priorities. Like, what do you want to happen and how do you want people, but most importantly yourselves, to feel, right? So
Yeah.
for me, it was I want our guests to really know who Anthony and I are. Anthony is my husband. And then that really informed the rest of our wedding. But like when you think about your values and your priorities, right? Like, what is the most important thing to you, right? Is the most important thing to just sign the paperwork and then like have a night with you two, or just you celebrating privately? Like, then that's going to inform the rest of your planning. If the most important thing is that you and your partners are, you want to be surrounded by family, then that's going to inform the rest of your planning. So before you even open Pinterest or start Instagramming like content creators, wedding vendors that you need to follow, like really sit down and be honest with yourself and think about like, what is it that you want out of this experience? So that is my biggest takeaway.
Definitely. So important, because it's like you might get into planning and you realize like, oh, I'm planning a wedding for my parents or for my partner. On that note, gonna get a little serious here.
I love that. Deep. I love going deep.
I think as women, or maybe femme presenting people, we take on a lot of the like emotional labor when it comes to wedding planning. And I think that can take like a lot of, I think it can take a toll on you, because even if, your partner's like, I want to help, tell me what to do, you're still having to think about what they can do, or you're still having to organize something for them so that they could, and it can be difficult because I think a lot of times one of the marriers takes on a lot of that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be women, but I think the majority of the time it is. So do you have any advice for like maybe how to get your partner to become more involved, or any thoughts on, the whole emotional labor aspect of it?
Yes, I do. I love that you asked that question, because I'm currently writing a blog right now about how to have like the best ways to approach wedding planning and make it stress-free. And I reached out to all of our Offbeat Wed vendors and I asked them for their advice, because I just write the content and I make the stupid videos, right? Like, I am not on the ground like you, Nina, like experiencing weddings like every weekend. So I love to turn to our wedding vendors for this. And someone said, okay, so Catherine Cooper of Catherine Cooper Photographies said that it's not fair for one person to plan everything. I'm literally reading their quote right now. They said, it's not fair for one person to plan everything. You need to calmly explain that saying whatever you want actually makes things harder, not easier. And then that can help set expectations, right? Because I'm sure, saying, I'll do whatever you want, tell me whatever you want, like that is, you're right, the emotional labor behind it. Now I have to think about what they want to do, like being involved from the get and being able to take on that labor before your partner can get to it, or even for all of y'all to be like, I'm very good at X, I'm very good at communicating with vendors, with people, I will take care of that, and then I'm very good at Y, so I'm going to be the one that's doing all the finances, the budgeting, etc. So having those expectations up front. This blog will be coming out next week, I believe. So I'm so glad that we're talking about this. But thanks, Catherine. That was very wise.
Yeah, www.offbeatwed.com. Yeah, I think that's really helpful, because I think a lot of times, you know, we might be dealing with somebody who's like, you're the one who wanted it. Like, not that like, ugh, that might be icky, but like, I'm not trying to point fingers, but sometimes people will want a big wedding, and then their partner will say, well, you're the one who wanted this big wedding, so you should be the one who's planning everything, and blah, blah, blah. Number one, you need to have a talk about respecting each other. Number two, there has to be like some sort of give and take when it comes to, who is primarily responsible for the happiness of the couple. It's both of them. It's not, or the marriers, it's all of them. So, and then, at the end, you don't want to be like, well, you planned it. So, it's like, you got to share the work. It's not easy.
Right, absolutely. And what I'm about to say might sound super controversial. This is a Suki belief.
Do
right?
it.
I do not like the whole concept of like, oh, the bride's parents have to pay for everything. Like, why is it not both parents, right? Like, this is exactly why Anthony
That's
and
not controversial at all to me.
I don't like it, and I think it's outdated. I think it is incredibly patriarchal. Like, and I think in some cultures they're like, oh no, the groom's side has to pay for everything. But either way, having one side or the other pay for everything, I think is absolutely, it's just so outdated. And I don't understand like why in 2023, like more people aren't like, let's do this as a joint venture. Like, if the parents want to pay for it, both sets of parents. Oh my gosh, your cat. Your
Sorry.
Your cat. No, I love it. I love it. I just don't understand why, in 2023, folks aren't like, let's all pitch in, because then it's just ultimately cheaper and more community driven than having like one side paying for everything. I really am.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it has happened, but I don't know of many people, at least in my friend group, who that applied to. Like, they paid for their own wedding because they were like, I don't want my parents to have this financial burden, number one. Number two, it's like, sometimes when somebody else is paying for it, they kind of want more of an input on what you're going to do that day. And it's like, at that, it's kind of like, well, mom's paying for it, so we should do what she wants and get this caterer or whatever. So I think part of that is the patriarchal aspect of it, which is disgusting. But also, I think being responsible and like having that aspect of it, if your parents or your partner's parents have set aside that money, it's awesome. Like, I think that's a great idea, but I also don't think it's necessary, and I don't think it's a rule.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband and I both wanted to pay for the weddings ourselves. We didn't want our parents involved in it because of exactly that. We wanted to not be beholden to someone else that's like pulling like the purse strings, right?
Right.
And we love our parents, but we knew that like, that financial help will come with consequences. So it was important for us to be able to pay for that themselves. And then on the topic of some parents like saving money for their kids to get married, I think it's super sweet, but also I am also like, that's so interesting. I love weddings, but why is it that like the act of marrying someone else is such an event, like such a monumental event, that like you're saving money specifically for that. And I have
Mm-hmm.
a friend, obviously I can't say names, but I have a friend whose parents put aside a ton of money for their wedding. And my friend was like, I do not see marriage in the foreseeable future, like, you know, in the next couple years. But what would really help me is if you gave me that money so I could pay off my student loans, right? And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, absolutely not. Like, why is it that this like hypothetical, not even happening wedding is more important than,
Right.
you know, your child like getting out of debt? Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
as much as I love weddings, this is where I think culture and money comes into play, right? Is
Right.
that people uphold like, you know, that to your child's financial freedom, right? Or,
Right.
you know, other things, like maybe they want to go to school, maybe they want to get a degree with that, maybe they want to buy a house with that. But like marrying someone else is like the gold
Mm-hmm.
medal of it all. So
I think part of it is, having the parents almost kind of see it as something that they can participate in. So I think, like you were saying, paying off student loans, buying a house, not technically something that, your parents are going to be super involved with. Maybe the buying the house, but, going back to school, I think that's not as family oriented as, let's say, a wedding. So I think that might be part of it. Another part of it is the outdated idea that you want your daughter to be viewed as, desirable. So you're saving up money so that her potential suitor will see that and be like, oh, we already have money for the wedding. I should just marry her or whatever. So it's like, it's a few things like that. But yeah, I agree. I think it's icky.
yeah, yeah. I could write a
But
whole book about it. Maybe I will.
maybe I will. Um, so you were saying you're married. You
Yes, I
you did you solo plan your wedding or did you hire a planner? How did that go?
so Anthony and I planned it together. I love him. I love him so much. But yeah, from the get-go, like him and I were having our wedding Wednesdays, as we called it, and
Oh,
we dedicated one day a week, Wednesdays, to drinking our favorite beverage and planning the wedding together. So I never felt like it was just me. But you know, the one thing that we both really regret, and you'll see this a lot on the Offbeat Wed Instagram, I really regret not hiring a wedding planner, coordinator, day of coordinator. We were on we had our goal of staying under 5K, and also not going into debt, not, you know, having to take a credit card out. Like, we really wanted to pay for this wedding in cash. And because of that, we didn't budget a day of coordinator. And looking back on it, I'm like, man, we should have found a way to do that, because it would have saved us so much stress and mental planning. And I posted a reel of like a duck running around during like a wedding reception. Like, Anthony and I were sort of running around during our reception because we were the wedding planners. And
right.
Anthony and I come from a film background, so we've been on you know, film sets, and we get a lot of like adrenaline from like running around on set and feeling accomplished, and like, you know, checking off our list and stuff like that. So we thought that,
Mhm.
oh, planning our own wedding and coordinating like, that's no problem to us. But at the end of the day, you know, looking back on it, like, we had an amazing wedding, but I really wish that I spent more of that time, you know, with my loved ones.
Enjoying it, right, yeah. Actually, and partying, like you
Yeah,
said
and not
earlier.
working my wedding. So
Mhm.
I
Yeah, I've
definitely.
heard I've heard that a few times. I think that's a common regret, and maybe regret is a strong word, but it's a common thought that people wish they had, another person to do some of the coordinating, I think is definitely. And sometimes as the photographer, you kind of step into that role if there isn't anyone, and it's like, and you have to be like the schedule keeper, and you have to be making sure everyone's in the right place at the right time. And I mean, as a photographer, I've like bustled more dresses than, not well, I might add. That's so hard. I don't know how people like, there was a wedding planner that was like, she saved me because I was like, yeah, like, well, hold on a second, because we wanted to take some like pictures of the bride and the groom before they were gonna walk out, and we needed to get her dress bustled so that when they were walking out, they could just start into their first dance, which was like a choreographed number. So it was like an important, she needed her dress out of the way. So I was like, "There's so many buttons." I was like, "I don't know where anything goes." There's, like, loops, and there was, like, colored strings, and I think this was only, like, my 4th or 5th wedding. It's probably, like, my 2nd wedding I ever had to bustle. The first one was easy because there was only, like, 3 loops, but this one was, like, oh my god, it was like crocheting underneath some 4 pounds of fabric on top of my head, so it was like, "What's happening?" But yeah, definitely having at least, like, a person whose, like, sole responsibility of the day to keep things, like, running smoothly and on time is super important because, like,
Yeah,
I'm just a photographer. I don't always know everything, and I don't
right.
always know, like, it'll say, like, celebration room or pergola, and I'm like, "I don't know where that is." Like, I
Right,
just get the
right.
schedule. I haven't, like, sometimes I'll walk through the venue before the wedding day starts, but yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say day of coordinator is a huge need, especially for maybe some of the bigger weddings or multiple location weddings for sure. But
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, like, photographers do a lot of work. Like, I think our 2 major spends were our DJ, because it was important for us to have music, and our photographer, because we really wanted beautiful photography, and man, God bless our photographer. Our photographer, like, managed people, like, hyped people up.
oh
Like, our
yeah,
photographer did so much work beyond, taking photos, taking gorgeous photos. So definitely a lot of
right.
respect for what you and Nina, you're so good with people. Like, Nina shot my 30th birthday, and literally everyone was like, can we invite Nina to brunch? Like, can Nina be in our friend group? Like, we love Nina so much. And then the venue, like the people who were at the venue loved you too.
Aw,
So Nina does a lot of the work that you don't even like notice, and all the things that are important too to keep the party
I'm
going.
turning red.
Oh, I love no, you're
Aw.
amazing. You're absolutely amazing.
I do love your friend group. I wanna start hanging out with you guys more now that I'm closer to the St. Pete area, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'll
absolutely.
definitely come hang out. But yeah, the venue was super nice. It was the Saint in St. Pete, and they had the 7 Deadly Sins cocktails. So it was really cool, and they were all super nice and welcoming and talented. Like they were doing all the shaking stuff, like I forget, mixology or whatever it's called. And, Suki was like super nice. She's like, please don't be afraid to eat or drink anything. Cause sometimes like people that I shoot for will won't, like, say that explicitly, so I don't, because I don't wanna, like, impose or, like, be rude. So some people, like, they they just forget, like, even if they wouldn't mind, they just kind of, like, don't think about it. So Basuki was like, "Please eat some cheese." I was like,
No,
"Okay."
absolutely. Yeah, like your vendors are working hard, and they are as much as a part of the experience as your guests are too. Like, please remember to treat them like your friends, because they're gonna treat your friends like they've known them forever. And that's something I super appreciate
Right,
about you, Nina, and like my wedding photographer and our wedding vendors. Like, they are just so like, what is the word? Is it interpersonal or intrapersonal? I don't know, but they just have like this high emotional intelligence that I feel like a lot of
right,
wedding just innately have. And they know when they're coming into a situation that might be high stress, high stakes, they need to make friends with everybody, and it's so easy for them. And it is not an easy thing, right? There's a lot of like
yeah,
psychological stuff that goes on behind it, but to be able to put yourself out there and treat people like you've known them forever is a lot of work. So I want to make sure that like you're treating my guests and me like a superstar. Like, I want you to feel good
right,
too, and I want you to feel taken care of. So if you're planning a wedding or a really big event, like, please encourage your vendors to eat and make sure
yeah,
that they're getting taken
and
care of.
I would also add to, like, get to know your vendors before, especially if you're gonna be spending, like, 10 hours with them, like, do a video call or even just, like, texting if you're you know, kind of get the vibe of who you're, because some weddings, some people pay thousands of dollars for their photographer or even other. Well, but I think your wedding photographer is one of the most, not only because of me, but no, I think your wedding photographer is one of the most important people you're going to be spending your entire day with. So you have to really make sure that you're clicking and the vibes are good, because they can have the most beautiful work, but if they're a shitty person, or if they're not like, or even if they're, your personalities just don't click, like it's going to be awkward, or it's going to be a weird day. So I would totally recommend even hopping on like a Zoom call. Like I've had video consults as well, just to like make sure that, you know, people know, number one, that I'm real.
Mhm.
I'm not just taking your money. And, you know, number two, to make sure that like, you know, we can hang out and it's a fun time. You know, it's not gonna be just like, uh-huh, okay, pose over here, hand on your hip or whatever, you know. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like imagine like having your best friend take a photo of you and then, having a stranger take a photo of you, right? Like you're going to act different, right? And the person
oh,
behind
for
the camera.
sure.
So a good
Definitely.
photographer or photographer that you jive with is going to make it feel like you're not having a photo taken. Like they're going to hype you up. They're going to make you feel great. And they're going to feel like your best friend. And they kind of are your best friend on the wedding day. And you want to be able to
For
have that relationship
real.
so you can have like really gorgeous, authentic photos. And you'll be able to tell the difference. Like even if you're not like a photography professional or a film professional, when you look back at your photos, you'll be able to tell like, oh wow, like I was really in that moment and it was a beautiful, authentic moment versus like now my hand is on my hip and I am smiling.
Hmm. And there's a trend going around right now. I've seen it on like reels and TikToks where it's like girls being like, I practice my soft smiles, right? And then they post like their pictures of them on their wedding day, and it's like every single tooth they own on display, and they're just laughing super hard, or they're like making funny faces, and like they're like laughing at these pictures, and I'm like me as a photographer, I love those moments, because it's like that's your true emotion. And maybe right now you're looking at it like, oh, I look so silly, I look ugly in this, whatever. But 10 years from now, you're going to look at it with much kinder eyes, like Moira Rose said, much kinder eyes. And you're going to think like, wow, look how happy I was, like how much fun I had. Like it just, like, I literally have goosebumps right now just talking about it, because I get so like emotional about like people and like how important a photograph is to documenting like the moment. I know it's like so cheesy, but to me it's like it's art, you know. You're not just like taking a picture, you're like capturing a feeling and emotion. And I think that's so important for your wedding day, because you can look back on it and laugh and be like, oh, this is when cousin Jerry fell into the pool or whatever. And I was
Mhm.
crying because I laughed so hard. But yeah.
Yeah. A great photographer with great photos is going to make you feel things like long after you look at those photos too. And
For
that's the
sure.
feeling that I want. It's so hard. I work in marketing and I always try not to like have cliches, or say things that like people have heard over and over and over. But I will speak personally, like it was very important for Anthony and I to have a good photographer on our wedding day. Like that was one of the things where we're like, we have a 5K budget. We're going to devote most of our budget to a good photographer because the party is amazing, whatever. I've done parties on like a $500 budget and they've been great, but I want photos that like I can look at long after and be transported to exactly how I felt. And that's how I felt like my photos are, because my photographer was so great and I invested that money into my photographer. And I mean, honestly, like have your uncle Bob like take a photo of you and then have like Nina take a photo of you and see the difference if you want to do like a trial run or something. So
Yeah.
uh,
And I think that it's so valuable. Like, you know, you're it's a one-time cost, but it's like a continuous dividends. I don't know what dividends are, but I think that means like keep getting stuff back, maybe.
right,
And
no,
I'm not a
exactly.
finance bro. I don't know.
Yeah, we're the creatives and we're super cool and we know
All
what we're talking
right.
about.
Was your wedding in Florida?
It was not, it was in New Jersey because that's where
Okay.
a lot of Anthony's family is. So
Okay. So have you had any like recent offbeat weddings in Florida? Because I've been struggling. It is hot and people like to do weddings outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, are people doing weddings in the summer?
So I mean, like elopements more like a 2 hour on the beach for very little,
Mhm,
yeah. So I mean it's hot. It's hot.
mhm. It was so
I
hot.
think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that sets Florida weddings apart is just like the temperature. I mean, we have some of
Mhm.
the most gorgeous wedding venues, but it's it is very steamy. Um, but
Yeah.
ha
And then
you've I'm
hurricane
sh
season gets like
right.
earlier and earlier every year. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
it's
feel like there's
terrifying.
like a period where, and if anyone here is not from Florida and they're thinking about a Florida wedding, I'm gonna be honest with you. Okay. There is a period from like March to April that is like beautiful for weddings. Like the weather is nice. It's springtime, it's gorgeous. Everything else is either super rainy, like the summer is hot. If you want to have an outdoor wedding, do not do it in the summer months. It's just awful for you and everyone involved and your photographer who's carrying all that equipment. And then in the fall is our hurricane season. So you could get really nice weather or you could get a hurricane. And that's a huge gamble. And I love October. October is my favorite month in Florida, but sometimes October is a hurricane month. Um, and you don't want to risk that. And then December to February is cold and gray.
Mhm.
So I think we have like 2 good months, but I
Yeah,
mean, we
I
have
mean
a lot of amazing venues in Florida that do
right,
indoor and outdoor. So have an
right.
option for because
Or
you
even
could get
just covered patios are great, like, not fully outdoors. I would endorse that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think there are some challenges to Florida when it comes to weddings, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
mean
went to a sunrise wedding in Fort Lauderdale and that was gorgeous. It was nice, it was beautiful, it was cool because, sunrise,
yeah.
it was on the beach. And then later that evening it rained, but it was okay because we were all inside partying. So if
Mhm.
you're okay with waking up super early and getting that gorgeous sunrise, that's an option too.
Yeah, I charge extra for that,
I don't
sunrise
blame.
time.
Yeah, gotta get the coffee
Yeah.
and yeah.
I did wanna ask you a little bit, so I I'm trying to get more LGBTQIA+ plus weddings because so as a vendor, I feel like a lot of, my wedding people find me through Yelp or even through, like I don't even know how they find me, honestly. I need to put something on my forum, but I think, like, some on Instagram, from all over.
Mhm.
Um, but I've been trying to reach that's part of why I joined Offbeat Wed was because of the, type of community it is. It's very open and welcoming, and I'm kind of looking to book more, you know, offbeat marriers. And so I'm actually hosting a giveaway to like free wedding photography for one couple who isn't straight presenting um or just heterosexual. And yeah, so I'm definitely looking out for that. I think it might be difficult for some people because my page might not represent um that type of couple because I just haven't had that. So I've been asking some of my friends if I could take some photos of them, who are in, I have a friend who's in a WLW relationship. And, so I was just wondering if there's anything else I could be doing to show people and show potential, people who are trying to get married that I am welcoming and I am trying to represent all kinds of people.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I actually think you do a lot of work on that. Like, I read your posts, right, on my personal Instagram and on Offbeat Wed, and it is very clear that you are an ally and an advocate for that. So I think, folks coming to see you on social and on your website, like, see that. I understand, like, you want your portfolio to show that too. So Offbeat Wed actually has a marketing guide, like it's called like inclusive marketing for wedding vendors, and all
Mm-hmm.
Offbeat Wed vendors get it for free. So that is, your like step-by-step guide on how to make sure that you show your potential clients, right, that you are inclusive, welcoming, you believe in diversity and equity. And then I think, you said that you took pictures with your friends. Like, people talk a lot of shit about styled shoots, but honestly, with the lack of diversity in the wedding industry, we need styled shoots, because how
Oh
else
yeah,
are we going to see that? I am an advocate for styled shoots. I think, you're on the right path with that. And you're reaching out to friends, like maybe even like offering like, oh, I want to do an engagement shoot with, a couple that doesn't identify as XYZ. Then I think that's a great idea, right? And you're doing a service for folks who are not typically seen in the wedding industry. So yeah, like, keep doing what you're doing. And if you need help with a styled shoot, if you need someone to like come and fluff a dress, like, I'm there. Like, I actually would love to see more styled shoots in Florida that represent, the diversity that we have here, because I think a lot of
mm-hmm.
people have this expectation of, oh, Florida has Florida man, and like, if it's not Florida man, like, it's a lot of like cis white people and stuff. But like, the people who built Florida are not cis white people,
Oh boy,
So I would love to see more of that, and like
for
the
sure.
beautiful, locations we have. And like, unfortunately, like, our politics is so shitty, but I do really believe that like our community here is gonna fight for, equity and inclusion in that. And I wish more people could see that. So I'm down to help you, make that more like
Mm-hmm.
visible, on your
Yeah,
social website.
maybe we can host a styled shoot together
Yeah,
for like
absolutely.
LGBTQ couples as models.
Yes. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I'll get with you on that. But I did want to ask you, the Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah.
Um, I know that you guys have a blog post about that already, but I wanted you to talk a little bit about that and tell us your thoughts.
Yeah. So I did write a blog post about that, and I made sure to run it by our team. I don't identify as queer, so I wanted to make sure that I got the insight and input from the folks who work on Offbeat Wed that do. And honestly, I'm like, for every person that's going to be just, very exclusive, there are so many other vendors out there who are inclusive, that don't agree with that, and that are willing to help you have the day that you deserve. And actually, a ton of vendors reached out and were like, we're offering this giveaway, right? Or they're posting on their page like totally unprompted, and they're giving their services away for free, right, for LGBTQ plus couples in need. So I think that's just such a beautiful thing. And I feel like the only feedback I have is like, if you don't identify as queer, like, then promote these people, like, make sure you
Mhm.
are lifting them up so other people can see it. If you know a queer couple that is engaged, send these vendors their way. We have an arsenal of amazing, including you, we have an arsenal of amazing vendors who are there to hype you up and be your hype person for your wedding day, and
Mhm.
believe that who you love doesn't fucking matter. Like, you still deserve an amazing celebration. So we have a ton of those people, and all I can do is lift them up and make sure that everyone can see them and know, like, okay, that person's shitty, but we have a ton of people over here who are going to cheer you on. So those are, in summary, my thoughts on that Supreme Court ruling. And I also wrote in the blog post, I don't know if you had read it, but a quote that resonated with me from my improv teacher, because I'm nerdy. My improv teacher told me that like you can say whatever you want on stage. You can say something awful and racist and just really shitty and biased on stage. But what you say has consequences. So the Supreme Court is basically saying, okay, this vendor can say whatever they want because it's their business. Sure, but that's going to have consequences. So maybe they're going to get less clients. Maybe they'll get the same amount of clients, right? But there are consequences whether that vendor feels it or not. And that's the way the cookie crumbles on that. So there's more
Karma.
good out there than shitty people. And that's not a person I would invite to my mom's egg roll cookout. In summary.
Yeah.
They're not invited to our Florida hangout, our Florida wedding vendor hangout.
No, I mean, Taylor Swift, Karma.
Oh yeah.
Just
absolutely.
play that song right now. Insert it here.
Right.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. As a science nerd myself, I definitely think, they are alienating people, but I also think that like the pendulum will swing, and, recently it got pushed real hard. And I feel like it's still getting pushed, but we're going to push back and we're going to continue to do so until people know that, what this country was founded on, why I stayed here and why my mom brought me to America was because everybody here is supposed to have an equal chance to be happy. And, everyone is supposed to be equal. And no one person is supposed to be better than another person. And that's why I like the values that, immigrant parents are showing me, like do your best and work hard and you should be a good person and you will have a happy life. And it's hard seeing like hate. I think like I'm such an empathetic person. It can really get to me to see like people feel down because of something a bunch of dementors said,
The mentors.
So yeah, it's rough, but
Yeah.
I think
No,
at the end of the
absolutely.
day, I think like, you can only do what you think is right. And as vendors, we have a responsibility to show people that, we accept you. And if you don't feel accepted somewhere, then maybe go somewhere else where you're not being torn down and you're being lifted up. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In the film industry, and I think it like applies to everywhere too, is like stop going to the places that don't want you there. Like go find the community that wants you there. And I think the issue is like folks don't know that there is a community that wants them there or can't find it easily. So I love it when I see vendors on social on their website, like just really trying to be as loud as they can, being like, we're a safe place, we're here for you, right? And the more you can do it, because social media is so powerful. It even if that person doesn't become your client, I just love knowing that they know there are people out there that support, their values. And I still follow wedding vendors that I didn't book for my wedding, right? But like that, I know, like, oh my gosh, like I know that like if I were backed into a corner, like they would be on my team. So and that's, especially what I love, like Offbeat Wed vendors. I said this in the blog too, but I see them being advocates and allies without being prompted, like at all. And I'm so happy that you're part of that community too. Like I've been wanting you to be part of this community for so long because I'm like, oh my God, Nina says like all this shit that I'm like, yeah, bitch. Like, yeah. But yeah, our vendors are definitely those folks that you want in your corner for sure. And we're meeting more and more of them every day. And if any marriers are listening to this, like, we're rooting for you and we care about you and we want you to have the best day ever.
And we love love. Like I think that's something that as a wedding vendor I say like all the time. And it's so cheesy. sorry for your marketing ears, but I just love, like, I don't care who you love, like, as long as they're, like, of age and consenting. Let me just put
Mhm.
that out there. But,
Yeah.
I think it's how can you be upset because somebody loves somebody else? Like, it just I don't get it. Like, I get so happy seeing people like, oh my God, airports. I'm a mess. I'm a
Oh,
complete mess. Every time I go to an airport and I watch people, like, reunite, I'm just like, I need to go I need to go to a different room. I have to go away from the arrivals because, like, Josh knows, like, my boyfriend knows I'm a hot like, so, like, emotionally connected. I don't know what it is, like, empathetic. I'll see like, I'll be watching like, remember a few years ago when there was that Super Bowl commercial with the puppy? There was, like, a puppy, and it was, like, Budweiser or something, and it was just, like, everyone was like, "Oh, that was such a cute commercial," and everybody, like, turns and looks at me, and I'm just bawling in the corner.
oh. Wait, was
I'm
this
like,
like the
"That's"
puppy and the Clydesdale? Like the
Yeah,
puppy and the
yeah, maybe. I think I forget exactly what it was, but I just remember having a very emotional reaction to it because I was like, "They're best friends, they love each other."
absolutely.
Everyone's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine, I'm
Absolutely.
happy."
I was like that for like I don't know, a Netflix show. And I started crying because of like a fictional animal that was doing something. Anthony's like, okay, just so you know, like this is a fictional, like a mythical creature. Like, I don't know why you're crying. But no, I think you love Love Actually.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so the airport scene in Love Actually, like,
Yes.
does that like tear you apart?
I mean, I think that was part of where it all started for me was when I mean, like, it, like, reinforced what I was feeling because when I was younger, my dad lived in Slovakia, my mom lived in America, so I would fly back and forth all the time, and I would see my dad for, like, a month or 2 over the summer, and then I would go back to America and go back to school, and I remember, like, being so sad that, like, I had to leave my mom, and then being equally as sad that I had to leave my dad, and I just was always, like, super emotional in airports, probably
Yeah.
because of that. So the reuniting is, like, probably a trigger, but it also is, like, so sweet to see, like, those videos where it's, like, an old man and he has, like, flowers and he's, like, shuffling toward his wife and he's like, "Here's your flowers, sweetie," and she's like, "Oh," and it's, like, after 50 years, he still gets her flowers after the train station, and my dad's mom, Babka Maya, she told me the story how her her boyfriend, my grandpa, her only boyfriend ever, her boyfriend at the time would get on to the train and she would, like, make him lunch, um, and he would get on the train. Maybe they were married. Why would she be making him lunch if she was not his wife? Anyway, so I think they were probably, like, freshly married. She would make his lunch and she would wave, like, as the train was rolling, she would be waving this handkerchief, and, he would be waving his, and, like, I was just like, "Oh my god, that's so fucking cute." And so, like, she was telling me the story about how, like, he sometimes, like, after he would come back and he would, like, not put his he didn't want her to see because he didn't eat his lunch because he didn't like it, so he would, like, wrap it he would, like, wrap the lunchbox in the handkerchief. So, like, now they have, like, this really adorable story about, like, reuniting and leaving each other, and I just always think about that and, like, the handkerchief and, like, the flowers and just the loving of another human. I think that might be the purpose of life is to, like, build connections and learn how to love because, like, why else are we here? Why else are we, like, cognizant? Why else do we have, like what is that word where it means we're self-aware? Why else do we have self-awareness? You know?
This is such a like engineer like speak. But I agree. That's so cute and beautiful. And it's also like a really cool testament of like how we love in different ways, you know, like for some it's like I make you lunch. And then for some, it's like, I don't like your lunch, but I love you. So I'm going to hide the lunch that I didn't like. That is so cute.
Yeah.
Aw.
And I saw like it was probably on Facebook, which I'm not a fan of, but it was a while back, and um it was like, I had to put my dog down recently because he was getting old, and my son didn't seem too upset about it or whatever. And I was like, what? So I like opened it
Mhm.
up, and it was like this long story. And at the end, it was like, I asked my son why he wasn't as sad as we were, and he said, because I know why dogs don't live as long as humans, because they don't need as long to figure out how to love. They know how to do it right away. And I was like,
Oh my God, stop. I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna
I
cry.
know, I
That's
know.
so cute. I know
And I
Facebook
was
is a
like,
mess, but sometimes it really gets you.
yeah, I love Facebook Marketplace. I don't like Facebook comments. If you ever want to like feel really bad about the world and our society, just go read a Facebook comment.
Oh
I
no.
think Instagram is getting pretty bad too now, but man, it's rough out
Yeah.
there. It's like conspiracy theories and mango chutney
Oh
recipes. It's like all
yeah.
Facebook is.
You either get something really valuable or like really terrible. Yeah. I mean, social media just generally is a shit show. And I think that like what I wish people would know, like if you're a vendor, or somebody that like has to use social media for business, like I don't want to say have a thick skin because I think that is so like shitty, but like get over it, right? But like
Mhm.
also know you need to be able to like what is it called? Use some like critical and emotional thinking and ask yourself like, okay, am I offended by this
Right.
comment because it is true and it hit something in me, or is this comment so like stupid that like it's not even relevant, right? And I can't even,
Mhm.
like you don't want to waste your time, right? And like don't waste your time on folks who are ultimately not going to become your clients, right? Like if people are commenting and they're giving you shit, they're not going to give you their money anyway. But
Right.
yeah, I hear
I
you,
have
like
I
it's
have
wild.
a litany of hobbies, one of them which is Olympic weightlifting. And
Love that.
something that my coach says that really resonates with me is be a goldfish.
Yeah.
So, whenever something really great happens or you have a great lift, celebrate for, your 10 seconds, then get back to work. You have a really
Mm-hmm.
bad lift, be sad about it for 10 seconds, get back to work. Like realize that like everything is temporary and something great can happen. It's not you're not always going to be hitting personal records. You should focus on the process
Mm-hmm.
basically. So,
Yeah.
have seeing a really nice comment, might make your day.
Mhm.
File that away. Keep going. See a horrible comment, try to do I know it's hard, especially because the human brain is actually like wired to focus on the negative because of how we evolved, like we focus on like, oh, last time I walked by that cave, there was a bear in there. So
Yeah.
we're not going to walk by that cave, like, so that's like our monkey mind. But
Uh,
it really is valuable to just be like, yeah, that was a shitty thing that guy said. He called me fat or whatever, even though this was a blog post about my photography. It's
mhm,
whatever. That guy
mhm.
probably hasn't like penetrated anything that's alive in like 17 years. Move
That's
on.
alive. That's alive for human.
Well, I mean, like, a couch or like, I don't know, whatever,
Right.
his hand, whatever. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, people,
No,
there's a
it
reason
definitely is a
people do that.
reflection of them
For
for sure.
sure. Like, it says so much more about them than it does of you. Like, oh, it's rough. And I think as somebody who's forced to be online, it's like it can get to you for sure. But think about
Yeah.
the long-term goal, why you're doing this, why are you posting? It's so
Mhm,
that folks who are trying to get married see like, oh, this person is a ray of sunshine in all of this mud. So,
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Like there are people that are paying attention to you and listening to you, even if they don't like or engage with your post, which is like another thing. Like if you like what someone's saying and you think it aligns with your values, like please like it, because that shows that creator or vendor or whoever that like they should keep going, right? Because there's going to be a lot more people, like going back to what we said earlier, is there are two sides of the spectrum, people who really, really like the restaurant and people who really, really hate the restaurant. And the more we can get people being like, we love the restaurant, then it all, because we're all humans, everyone behind social media is a human, right? Like we can show that person like, hey, what you're saying is valid and valuable, and keep going.
Right, for
But
sure.
it's tough. It definitely is tough out there on social media. And unfortunately, I think it's coming to Threads soon. Like people are like, oh, Threads is a safe space. It is a safe space for now, but we're going to get shitty people on there, going to get bots. We're going to get, because what do they care about? Money, right? So they're going to fuck with the algorithm. They're going to make it so that our shit gets pushed out to people that hate us, disagree with us, just for engagement and ad views and stuff like that. It's going to happen eventually. So as long as
But if you go onto a website that that provides value and that has like-minded people like Offbeat Wed, you're going to find that, maybe I don't know if you guys run ads, probably because you're trying to make money, but you're going to find that you're not getting bombarded with negativity. You find a community that is supportive, and maybe stick to that. Don't try to go swimming in the trenches. I think that's why blogs, I think, might be seeing a resurgence soon. And I've already seen that in how much it can provide value, especially in the wedding community. But even like food blogs, community blogs, like sports blogs, like
back into like social media, right? Like you have to have that filter. And if somebody is hurting you, or someone, is constantly like attacking you, and it is taking a toll on your mental health, on the way you live your life, like that's absolutely a reason to be like, okay, I do not want you in my community anymore.
right.
People are complex, right? I mean, we see that a lot on Offbeat Wed. Like even before I started Offbeat Wed, there are people with all sorts of opinions. And I think to be able to hear all those opinions and make your own decision, but also understand, like, just because this person has this thought doesn't make them like a terrible person. Like I can still have a relationship with them in this way.
Part of it is also that everybody longs for that connection and that community. So like when you find it, it might be, it's hard to, you cling on, right? Because you're like, these are my people. This is my family now. And I think your website does such a great job of showing, marriers that there is a place where they belong. And I think that's very valuable. I think is so much better to find it there rather than having to go hunt for it on Instagram, even though I know you're on Instagram. But once you find it, don't let go. We're rooting for you.
That's so sweet of you. Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of Offbeat Wed marriers who got married years ago that still follow the blog, still follow our socials, and people who have no plans of getting married that are following us. And I think that is super sweet and special. And I have so much gratitude for that. Like you and I, like we found like what we connected with on that blog, right? And my hope is that me and the rest of the team, that we can reach like another demographic of marriers, because like I said earlier, language changes and the way that we think about weddings change. And I'm seeing how Gen Z and Gen Alpha are sort of thinking about weddings. And I want to be able to not just keep up with it, but understand like where they're at. And I hope to be able to tap into that, understand where they're coming from, and meet them where they're at. I think it's going to be really fascinating and interesting to see. And there's always going to be folks who are, walking off the beaten path, like you and I, right? Like we do not want to do like what everybody else is doing, right? Because we don't see ourselves there. We see ourselves in the weird and the wacky and the funky space, right? So I think there's always going to be that in every generation, and I'm excited to see what that looks like for the coming marriers.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you don't think of yourself as like wacky or weird or you don't fit in, you are still welcome in this community. If you think that, oh, I'm vanilla, I'm plain, I'm normal, I'm, a cis het white woman, you could totally still belong here. Like, you don't have to be totally goofy to fit in with us. Like, we accept anybody, even the strangely normal, So come
Yeah,
on
there's
by and
actually a blog about that. That's like, I believe a reader wrote to us, my wedding isn't offbeat enough. And I feel guilty because my wedding isn't offbeat enough. And uh, the response was, it's not about being offbeat, it's about being authentic. Like, we love seeing weddings that are authentic to you. So if your wedding, going back to what we said before, if your wedding, caters to, what your parents want, and that's something that you feel strongly about, you want to have your parents' culture and priorities in there, then that's authentic to you. And we want to see it. Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, there's a fire breather and like there's like a dragon in the corner and all that stuff. Like, we accept all sorts of weddings as long as it is true to who you and your partners are. So yeah, I love that. I love the idea of like being like, this is really more about like authentic weddings versus like offbeat weddings. I think
right.
offbeat might be a misnomer because people think like, oh, like this is where like Invader Zim comes in and like Hot Topic and goth weddings and stuff, but it's just so much more than that. And that's why I love this community. You see so many beautiful, wonderful weddings of like across the spectrum, right?
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We've been talking for like an hour and a half now, but I really appreciate you sitting down with me today and telling us about your website. If you can let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so y'all can find us on www.offbeatwed.com. We are also on Instagram as Offbeat Wed and Threads as Offbeat Wed and TikTok as Offbeat Wed.
Awesome. And is there anything coming up, like any secret deets you want to spill for any new posts or events that you and Baratova Photography might be planning?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I am really excited to try to organize with you, Nina, like a of Florida wedding vendors like get together, right? To like reclaim, like what getting married in Florida means. Like, that would be really
Hmm.
cool. And I go to Seattle sometimes, and we had like an Offbeat Wed like party there. We got to meet like a lot of vendors. I would love to meet vendors like all over the country. That would be super cool, and overseas.
Yeah, super cool.
And
I've
yeah.
always wanted to do an overseas wedding. So if you are planning on eloping out of the country, I will shoot your wedding for free. You just have to pay for transportation and housing. If it's a multi-day wedding, housing too, but if not, then just transportation. Anyway, subtle plug.
Irony, she's amazing.
Well, I miss you and I can't wait to hang out with you. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop recording now if I can find the button. Do do do. That was so fun.